Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is 5525, and today I'm bringing you yet another game from the Dota 2 Casted subreddit. And today's game has been submitted by a Mr. TKDota, who we can already see over on that Dire side. So, all pick once again. So far, we've only got the Darkseid coming out from the Radiant, which, depending how they want to play this, might go for them AoE wombo combo. Alchemist Darkseer alone can be a very devastating combo if you can get 2 or 3 people with that stun. It's a very powerful stun, both in duration and in damage. But it's quite likely we'll see somebody like the Queen of Pain, somebody like the Puck, if they're picking with each other in mind. Try and combo off that. Or, you know, we might just see, whatever. It is a pub game after all. We might get the 4 carry and Darkseer lineup, something along those lines. Meanwhile, we have got the clock being picked up over on the Radiant side, sorry, Dire side. Just get that gold graph out of the way. There we go. Right, so far, I mean, really the only person who can combo particularly well with Darkseer is that Dazzle. I seem to get a bit of SBS lag. I'm not 100% sure what that was. Anyway, so the Dazzle with the weave coming down on top, indeed with the heal, it can do quite a bit of damage in that AoE. And the Alchemist, outside of that, the Weaver isn't a particularly AoE-centric hero. He's a fantastic carry, and in fact, and indeed, both the Alchemist and the Weaver will be able to dish out a lot of damage in addition to the slot. Because of Dazzle's Weave, he can hit an entire team. Not only does that amplify just right-click damage, it means you can deal a colossal amount of damage thanks to what Alchemist is throwing out with his stun. It's amplified by minus armor. And indeed, Dazzle's damage is going to go up because of the Acid Spray. Meanwhile, we've got both teams picking all their heroes now. So, Peak Disorder going to be playing that Darkseer, I assume, in the offlane. Boriquakid playing that Dazzle, and it looks like he's going to be supporting Seraquim on the Weaver. Meanwhile, Alchemist going mid, being played by PCFCBanana.net, and GTX T-Jack on that top lane Slark. So it's going to be dual lanes. Alright. Meanwhile, over on the Dire side, we have Neymar Brazil playing the Enchantress. She may be heading to the jungle. She looks like she's got wards, so she'll probably be looking to set them up first, at the very least. The Savargeg playing that Visage. And he looks like he's heading mid. Actually, it's going to be a top lane Visage, as I would have thought. TYS RYZ playing the mid Shadow Fiend. TYS at TKDota. The man of the hour on the Clockwork, and finally Antony playing that Spirit Breaker. Now already I'm seeing more of a mid-game oriented lineup. So coming out from the Dire side, you've got that Clock, lots of ganking power. Spirit Breaker, basically the only thing he can do is not that great, not that flash in team fights. We have got a ward coming out from Dazzle to block that camp. Enchantress has run into him, but I don't believe we have sentries up, so they're not going to have the ward. That may give him an inkling as to where that ward has been placed, though. Enchantress taking that channel. Dazzle actually playing quite aggressively, possibly trying to punish her before she can get that creep up. Enchantress, of course, we do have Slark roaming in. Enchantress is going to back off there. But she has got a creep. She's going for, I think, more of the jungling build as opposed to yanking. Another ward coming out from Dazzle. He knows what's going on. Out comes the Poison Touch. Poison Touch at level 1, of course, very, very lackluster. Almost no slow, negligible damage. Meanwhile, mid lane, I think that TYRIs will have the easier time, but Alchemist is generally more kind of a defensive laner when it comes to the mid. He'll throw out spray, he'll try and get as many last hits as possible, but he can't control the lane that well. It'd be interesting to see if he goes for the Ancient stacking. That is a build that I have seen floating around on PlayDota, using that spray to stack up the Ancients. Because indeed, it can massively accelerate both your farm and XP. At the same time, it is a bit risky because it means you have a lot less control of the lane with Alchemists because you're already spamming your spray. There comes the sprays that I was talking about, going for those last hits. Now, Clockwork being forced to play quite defensively. We don't actually have a ward blocking that pull camp, so Darkseer, if he wants to, could pull it, but he's not for whatever reason. Perhaps he's thinking that he's more of a semi-carry. I don't know. He's too good for pulling. But in the last hits, nice. Alchemist actually leading the way, which is interesting because Alchemist, quite often I see, does actually get zoned out of that mid lane. Simply can't control it effectively. Nevermore, of course, until he gets those levels in Necromastery, he does struggle a little bit in terms of lane control. But I think once we start to get more Necromasteries, failing a gank or a first blood coming out from Alchemist, I think Shadowfin will start to pull ahead simply because he'll become better and better at last hitting. and Alchemist doesn't have that great control of a lane.
Tower is under attack.
But as I said at the very start, I do see more of a mid-game lineup on the Dire side. You've got the Enchantress, who falls off late simply because she's quite squishy, she gets mounted by AoE. But during that sort of mid-game ganking, she offers a lot of power thanks to Enchanted Creeps. The Visage, all about the mid-game thanks to Soul Assumption. And I think he should start to roam. Spirit Breaker, basically the epitome of the ganking hero. Clockwork does have a bit of teamfight presence, and so does Shadow Fiend. But comparatively, Shadow Fiend isn't as hard to carry as certain other heroes, especially not when you're going up against an Alchemist and a Weaver. If you draw this out late, your team's going to lose. Simply because you don't have the heroes to maximize that farm. At the same time, having that mid-game lineup does bode well for the Dire side, I think, because Alchemist is a hero who actually isn't that good from playing from behind. When it comes to steroids, he's fairly lackluster until he hits that level 16. And up until that point, he really relies on his gold advantage to carry. But what that means is that he starts to fall behind in gold if he gets ganked constantly, as a Spirit Breaker, as a Clockwork, as a Visage can do. If they can force him out of that lane, force him into the jungle, then start to deny him that jungle with wards, pick him off whenever he tries to get out, and make him scared to farm, and bottle him up in the base, which I think they have the potential of doing because they have the better team fight at the moment. Then I think the Alchemist will start to feel that lack of gold, and indeed they might be able to roll over. At the same time, if Alchemist is allowed to play defensively, if Weaver's allowed to play defensively, get that farm into him, then eventually they will just turn around. And meanwhile, top lane we do have Slut going for the Visage. He managed to get the first blood, but he is going to drop to a creep of all things. Enchantress coming in, but a little too late. Dazzle's actually opting to forgo the point in Shallow Grave, which is a build I don't really agree with, to be honest. I think that you do need at least 1 point in Grave, simply because heal, not the best scaling in terms of individual points. You're better off taking 3 points in Touch and 1 point in Grave for the slow that Touch offers, and indeed for the power that Grave offers. Because preventing a pick-off by the Visage, or the Spirit Breaker, or indeed that Clockwork, could be a major factor in one of these fights if he can get a Grave off early. Because once we see Spirit Breaker hit level 6, he'll be roaming all around the map, I would imagine. I'm not a big fan of taking a point in Empowering Haste, because I think that Charge of Darkness, well, you should be maxing Bash first, simply because it gives the greatest damage output. But a single point Empowering Haste, it's a pretty lackluster skill at the moment, and compared to Charge and compared to Bash, it's just not worth taking a point in until you hit that level 10, at which point, you might as well. But I think what's really going to be the deciding factor of how this game goes is the first 15 to 20 minutes. Once we start to see the 6 up a clock, he's almost got that 6. Meanwhile, Spirit Breaker picking up a kill top lane on that Dazzle. Thanks to, I think, the Enchantress, she hadn't used her slow, but that wasn't really needed. The Hellbear Basher came out, Smasher came out, so from Sarge, I assume, set up, and indeed that charge from Spirit Breaker. And there's not much Dazzle can do. He doesn't have Grave. Even with Grave, I think he probably would have dropped simply to right clicks and being unable to run away. So that is 2 kills the way of the Dire side, but we did have first blood going to Slark. I do apologise. But yeah, once we start to see that Spirit Breaker with 6, once we start to see the clock with 6, actually having to back up now. He is going to actually juke back down. He does have to go for TB, no mana. About to use it now. We don't have Vacuum, and I think he might actually be in a trouble. He does actually get away. I'm alive, says TKDota. Indeed he is. And I think Weaver should have tried to get a little bit closer, because a little bit of shell damage there would have been more than enough to finish him off. I mean, Alk at level 6, nevermore. As I said, he started to creep back up in farm. He is actually, looks like he was going to be able to take on the Alchemist, but now Dazzle roaming in. Do we have the level 5? We do, and so there comes the stun. Now he's just going to get right-click down. A single right-click is enough to drop it. Dazzle having very, very powerful right-click damage for a support hero. For a support intel hero at that. And indeed, against a hero like Nevermore, doesn't have a great deal of health, doesn't have a great deal of armor either. And it looks like Dazzle's actually opting not to take the weave. Which, I mean, I I like taking touch to level 3. I hate when people put a single point in it because it's a really shitty thing to have one point in. And Tony now getting stunned by the Dazzle. Slark isn't going to follow up though. It's fairly spammable, slow. Meanwhile, we have Visage looking like he wants to go in, and a TP coming out from the Shadow Fiend. Clockwork actually picking up a kill on the Weaver, I assume pinning him in as Weaver tried to dive. Charge coming out on the Dazzle. We don't have the Grave, so he is dead. Out comes the Soul Assumption, and he might actually be able to live thanks to the power of that heal. Now having to back off as Rise keeps moving in. But a Mr. Raise means that they're going to have to back off. So I think that Weaver tried to roam in, clock hooked, and then immediately cogged, keeping him in range of the tower. Up into max cogs over battery assault, which means that he has a lot of lockdown against a hero like Weaver. That is quite important. Indeed, against a hero like Alchemist, it means that the rest of the team can just boil around. We have got the charge coming out from Spirit Breaker, Shadow Fiend roaming in as well. Only a single point in charge at the moment, which means that he will take quite some time to get here. I don't think Banana realizes what the trouble is. He does now. Out comes the charge. We have the ulti on Spirit Breaker. We do, but no matter. But a right click is going to be enough to finish him off. And Spirit Breaker going for the Mask of Madness build, which I agree with. As I said, you need that mid-game dominance. Mask of Madness, one of, in fact, I think the most cost-efficient item in the game when it comes to damage. And as long as you have the momentum, as long as you're able to keep your enemies playing defensively, stop them from actually fighting back, Mask of Madness is a fantastic pickup. The problem is that later on it will start to fall off as Alchemist starts to bulk up, as Weaver starts to be able to fade in and out of fights, pick people off from the edges. That's when Mask of Madness starts to lose its edge. And I think Dire basically has to... Out comes the slow from Dazzle. We do have the mana for charge, so we can get away if he needs to. Slow coming out on the T-Jack. He charges, and that will be enough to get him away. T-Jack actually taking quite a bit of damage from that charge. And now going to back off. Clockwork Mimas going back, but I think it needs to, we do have two heroes roaming. He throws out the hook, but misses, and we don't have detection, unfortunately. But it doesn't really matter. Weaver taking a lot of damage. The second raise is going to miss, though. That's when Mimo picking up a kill on Enchantress. Weaver should be able to get away. Didn't actually see what happened there. I think that Slug must have pounced. Indeed, it's on cooldown. Must have pounced in, and then Dazzle would have healed him. I still really don't agree with Dazzle not taking him point in Grave. Grave is the Dazzle's bread and butter, is his most powerful skill, and especially when you've got this mid-game picking lineup, I think you do need to. TKDota blocking Disorder in, but taking a lot of damage from the tower, and he will drop to his illusion, I think. Actually able to get away, toggling that toggling that aggro, and able to pick up 2 kills on the Weaver. I actually thought that might have been a bit of a misplay by him getting trapped so far out, getting an ulti thrown at himself, but in the end, worked out very well. And this should be a free tower. Meanwhile, Visage is in a lot of trouble. He does have the touch, so that might get thrown out. Taking a lot of damage simply from Erd, and he is going to drop after all. Now, the thing is, Dazzle would touch with 4 points, and it has a fantastic cooldown. It's incredibly spammable. At the same time, it doesn't really feel like this is a team that can really use it. If you're going for that really mid-game roaming Dazzle, a team where you're trying to pressure the enemy carries back, where you're trying to play as aggressively as possible, then 4 points in touch, absolutely fantastic. We already have the Shadow Blade being picked up on Alchemist. Now, I was saying that Alchemist does want to farm, and that's true, but seeing we've got that touch pickup on Dazzle, as I said, level 4, we have the Shadow Blade, looks like he's going for Nevermore, and out comes the touch. This is a very dead Nevermore. Ulti comes out, not really enough to do anything at all. Starts coming in far too late. Out comes the hook on Alchemist. He does have his ulti up, so he may be able to tag through this. We have the battery set coming out, not doing too much damage, only level 1, but he will be able to drop down Alchemist. Dazzle now on the offense. TKDota taking a lot of damage. Charge coming out from the Spirit Breaker, and I think that will be able to finish him up. We do have a TP coming out from the Alchemist. He does have the stun and the Shadow Blade if necessary, but now the charge is going to come home on the Dazzle. Go down to a single right click. Ulti rather unnecessary there, but it picked up the kill. But meanwhile, Alchemist going on D-Star Jed had used the stun, and Vacuum coming out enough to secure the kill for Alk. Now this is very worrying for the Dire side. As I said, they're a team that doesn't scale as well into that late game. So the fact that this mid game already feels like it's going in Radiant's favor, just bring up gold, indeed about 1500 in Radiant's favor, XP more or less even. But the fact that this game it feels even or even leaning towards Radiant. Doesn't bode well at all because they need to have be able to pressure these lanes. They haven't got a single tower down yet, and they do need to start denying this farming space to both the Weaver and the Alchemist. Meanwhile, Slark getting charged. We do have the TP coming in from Dazzle, throws out that slow on TC Rise, but the charge has hit on Slark. Now, not going to follow up though. He doesn't have the ult. He's still 20 seconds off. Another TP coming out from Darkseer. Rise playing very aggressively, going very far. Is able to actually pick up the Dazzle. Now, in comes the Enchantress. But I think Nevermore, well, he has the haste rune. He will be able to get away by the skin of his teeth. In comes the Visage Familiar, is able to get the stun on T-Jack. And now we do have the stomp on the Centaur, but not going to opt to use it. And Enchantress meanwhile dropping to a tower. I assume that was a tower hit that she just didn't have the HP to tank. She's going for the Midas build, which, again, it's an item build I don't agree with in this scenario. I don't really agree with it in general, because Enchantress is a mid-game oriented hero. She can't carry that effectively because she's so squishy. And she's not designed to be in the center of fight. But it's especially bad in this case, I think, because Midas is here. We're going to see the stun coming out from Alchemist. In he goes. Right click and the stun. Look at that HP just drop, and 2 clicks are enough to clean her up. But first of all, she needs to be tanky when you're going up against a hero like Weaver, when you're going up against a Atari like Banana, like Alchemist, sorry. But at the same time, Midas is a farming item, but this isn't the game where you can really afford to just sit back and farm. It's a game where you have to attack, attack, attack. Because if you don't, you will get overwhelmed eventually. Now sitting at 9 all. And like I said, I thought Alchemist would be going for that farm-oriented build. He's actually going for the more aggressive. Looks like he's picked up the Shadow Blade, which isn't that uncommon, but he is opting to max Spray and Concoction first over Greed. We do have the TP coming in from Darkseer, should be able to head off that push. Doesn't mean while picking up yet another kill on the Visage, but now surrounded by 2 Familiars and a Angry Clockwork. But he will actually be able to get away. We don't have the cogs to finish him off, but now a charge coming out from Spirit Breaker. That will finish him off. He doesn't have the Grave, it's still on cooldown. And he's going to drop indeed. There we go. Do apologize. Spirit Breaker, meanwhile, I think going for the urn, it looks like, with those 2 gauntlets. We are going to see the Alchemist. He's invisible. He has the stun. He might actually be able to hit 2. We do have... he is going to stun himself on top of a Nevermore, but Nevermore not actually able to get too much damage off because his ulti doesn't deal that great damage at level 1. Antonio now chasing after Banana Dot Net, Shadow him picking up Darkseer, but the shell just melting away at Antonio's health. He throws out the ulti, but the invisibility should be enough to let Alki get away. And he's going to go for the right click on Antonio. He does have the stun, and that flying out will finish well. Now we have the clock, still 5 seconds off from his ulti. We have a raise coming out, 2 raises, still not enough, and the rocket will finish off. Weaver now coming in. We don't have any detection at the moment. Spirit Breaker had bought dust, but died before it could get off. Now we have the heal coming out from Enchantress, and I think the Dire looks like, yeah, they're going to be pushing up mid as far as possible. We have a TP coming in from Dazzle. Still has an option to take opponent's ulti. Again, I mean, I have mixed feelings about this because this is a game where anybody can get picked off. Cogs, in comes the hook on Aquakid. He throws out the Grave straight away. We don't have the mana for Cogs. Now he's going to try and back away. He is stunned though, and the Grave isn't enough to save Dazzle. Weaver now going for, I think, TKDota is going to jump straight back into the path of a Nevermore. And this tower, I think, is going to go down. He is still playing for that clock. And the Cogs are actually going to finish him off. Never run into Cogs. It's a bad idea. And so now this game's actually feeling like it's starting to swim back in Radiant's favor. We've seen them picking off the Alchemist. We've seen them picking off, I believe that was Alchemist's 3rd death. But the first big time that he'd been picked off when it was in kind of a free-for-all fight. Dire picking up their first tower of the game. And if they can keep this momentum up, I think they still have a shot. Looking at gold, it is actually swinging down quite sharply back in the Dire's favor, about 2,000 drop. And XP, very massive drop from basically a 3k drop. From 1,500 in Radiance to 1,500 in Dire's favor. But it looks like they're actually going to go back to farming. Slack meanwhile going for the Enchantress off, and she has to back off. Now we have the charge coming out from Spirit Breaker. Does he have the ulti? He does indeed, but I don't think he has the damage to actually finish him off. We do have the dust, so we think he's going to use it, and indeed not going to use the dust, still not using it. There we go, at last. But now, out comes the dance on the Enchantress. She's going to drop, and we have the ulti coming out from Spirit Breaker, and he's trying to get away. Visage comes in with full soul assumption, but very far in indeed, and he's going to drop 2 right clicks. I'm not sure why he went so far in there. Now TZ Rise is top, should be able to head off this push if it happens. We did have the ulti from Darkseer coming out there, and so that will really hurt any chance of a fight. Out comes the heal from Dazzle, dealing a whopping amount of damage. Now, and Tony going for the charge, but cancelled almost instantaneously by Vacuum, now taking a lot of damage. TC Rise now in a lot of trouble as Slight finished him off with a Dark Pact. Disorder now chasing after the Spirit Breaker, running him down with that shell. And I did just say that it felt like Radiant Dire was starting to get control, but a fight like that, it looks like Radiant is really showing their power mid-game. Even though, as I said, I don't feel that they have as strong a lineup mid. 2 TPs coming out to try and deal with that clock, but he's going to live thanks to the Cogs. Well, Cogs is going to pretty much prevent any kind of aggressive play. And now down goes the tower. So that's 2 towers for Radiant, 1 tower for Dire. And it's looking good, I have to say. Because now Radiant already able to take these fights. Dazzle's still not taking a point in Weave. And so far he hasn't really needed that. And I I did say that I wasn't sure about the touch max. I think it is paying off this game because we are seeing both the Alchemist and the Dazzle roaming really effectively, able to create a lot. Well, basically make Dire instead of Radiant afraid to move too far out in case they get picked off. Visage now sitting at 5 deaths. I think partly owing to that roaming power. Alchemist picking up yet another kill on that Shadow Fiend. Now out comes the charge on Weaver. We do have the ulti up, and it is going to be enough to finish him off. We now have the stun charging up on the Alchemist. The stun might actually be able to, yeah, he does get it off just in time, and Tony taking quite a bit of damage. Now locked in with an angry Clockwork, firing away with battery, so he doesn't have his ulti form, and he is going to drop to a right click from Clock. I think Clock really showing us now 8 kills. He's been able to kill Weaver quite a few times. He's just killed Alchemist stuff. He's doing quite a bit to pressure the enemy team, but alone it's not enough. And I think in that top fight, if he'd been present there, it would have swung quite a different way. And I think he almost needed, well, his team needed to not engage without him there, because they can't afford to be losing fights at this point, because if they get into a deficit, then they will have a much harder time than the enemy team to fight their way out of it. Because as I said, they don't have the hardest of carries. Looks like Slug now roaming around for Antony. Out comes the pounce, not actually able to hit. We do have the charge on the Spirit Breaker. Should be able to get away with that. Much difficulty at all. Spirit Breaker meanwhile not really doing all that much to try and pressure the enemy team. The jungle still feels very much in the control of the Radiant side. I think we do need some aggressive wards, maybe one here, maybe one over here, so the Spirit Breaker can really make... now we have got the in comes the Clock on Disorder. We do have the Cogs coming out. It is going to stop any real follow-up to that Vacuum. Now then we're going for the ulti, not dealing a great deal of damage, but down goes the Slug anyway, and the Darkseer. Now we've got on the run. He has got the dust on him, but they're not going to be able to catch him in time. But now, in comes Alchemist, going for a rise. He doesn't have his ulti quite yet. It's up in 2 seconds. Not really needed. Anyway, Visage, I think, about to drop, and indeed, down he goes. Weaver now roaming back in as Dazzle gets whacked by the Spirit Breaker. Now, Spirit Breaker will have the back off here. He is going to get forced off the way by the Clock. And he's going to blow himself up. There we go. That's going to allow TKDota to get away. Now, Enchantress going on the aggressive. Up again. She's now caught between both a Weaver and an Alch, but they should be able to get away. We don't... Alch not quite willing to start charging out that stun. Now, I feel that fight... Radiant came out of that with death. Like, with more deaths, I think. But, Dire... It felt like Dire had lost that, really. Because Alchemist was alive... Weaver was alive, and meanwhile we had the Shadow Fiend dropping, getting off an ulti that didn't deal all that much damage. He's now about 200 off from that BKB. And Radiant, I think, are playing very well. they're taking fights, but only fights that will where they can catch people out with their pants down, when they know that the whole team isn't there. Or indeed like that, where they know that Alchemist can come in later and clean up. We do now have TJ Jack in a lot of trouble. TKDota throws out the cogs, but it's the ulti of Spirit Breaker that actually brings him back. And that's going to be enough to drop him to right click, allow him to drop 2 right clicks. So now we're starting to see a little bit of that pressure. Visage in a lot of trouble. Out comes the out comes the touch. He is stunned. We do have 2 roaming in comes the hook from TKDota jumping in on Disorder. Out comes the ulti from Darkseer. He's going to clock is going to force out now. Baraka Quid trying to get away from an angry Spirit Breaker. But not really able to make too much happen there in the long run. Although Slark did drop earlier, but aside from that, not all that much. We do, however, get the Shadow Fiend picking up that bottom tower. And now that we've got that tower there, we do have 1 ward up here. I would like to see, as I said, another one here in this area to try and prevent Alchemist from really farming up. And we're seeing them now actually start to exert some of that pressure that I was talking about. I think partly due to that clock. We do have a charge coming out from the Spirit Breaker. Where is he heading? He's going to cancel it almost immediately. I think somebody's saying, no, we're not going to go in. Which I agree with, because jumping into a tower when you've got 3 heroes missing is never a good idea. Especially, as I said, when you can't afford to be losing these fights. Every fight that Dire takes now, they have to be sure that they can win. Because anything where they don't pick up the Alchemist, anything where they don't pick up the Weaver, they're going to get farmed from just being in that fight. And that will allow them to just increase their advantage. Looking at Networth, we now have Alchemist sitting about 2k above the Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend doing pretty well compared to the Weaver, sitting on almost nothing at all. 4,000 gold in terms of net worth. But we do now have him going for Brazil. In comes the Vacuum, and that should be enough to make sure Brazil does not get away. She is going to get 4 stuffed away. Now Slug on the aggressive charge coming in from the Spirit Breaker. Hook coming out from Clock, not actually able to hit anything. Now the ulti from Spirit Breaker going for a Baraka Quid as hard as he can. But now the Poison Touch, in addition to that Surge, should be enough to allow him to get away. And indeed, he's going to drop to a Weaver. Sarge picking up the Slug in the meantime. Now here we have the Alk. He has his stun. He's going to go straight for Rise. Throws down the spray. Out comes the touch on Nevermore. Going to stop him from getting away. And Brazil going to drop. She picks up the Weaver, but drops the Alchemist in return. The Cogs will allow Clock to get away. 3 bounces on that Alchemist. No mana to speak of. He is charging up that stun now. Looks like he wants to go in, and I think this Visage is going to be in a lot of trouble. He's actually going to go for TKDota instead. 4 staff. That's away, but still going to get hit. And there should be a tower. They're actually going to opt to back off, though. I don't think that there was a whole heap that Clockwork or Visage could have done to defend that. They are going to go back in, just waiting for that creep wave now. And finally, we have that weave pick up. I'll go farm, says Alchemist. Not sure if he meant to say that in all chat. I do kind of agree with him farming, because as I said, he has the stronger late game. You've already got this pressure in the mid game, but you don't have to worry about your momentum. We have the hook coming out from Clock, is going to land on that Dazzle, taking a lot of damage as the charge comes through. We do have the ulti up, and that will finish him off. But now Darkseer on the run. He does have Surge if necessary, and out it pops. Sun coming out, neither of them connecting. Alchemist just farming away, and it doesn't look like the Dire side is willing to chase any further, as we have the Weaver coming in. Spirit Breaker looks like he wants to get something done, but the rest of his team nowhere near. He might actually be heading for that Weaver. Yeah, I just saw his charge get cancelled. He doesn't have his ulti though, so I don't think he has anywhere near enough damage to finish off Weaver in that charge duration alone. It's actually interesting because Dazzle is a support hero, but he's been such a massive pain. Looking at 8 kills, 5 assists. But in terms of roaming, he's been able to create a lot of control of the map for his team. And that kind of speaks, like, you saw how aggressively Spirit Breaker was trying to kill him. And I think that was because Dazzle had been such an irritation. He wanted to show him who was boss. It's like now picking up the SMY. Something I don't really agree with at all. I think he would have been better served going for that BKB, taking a lot of the edge off of Spirit Breaker's damage, taking a lot of Visage, indeed, of Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend, meanwhile, picking up that BKB will allow him to be a bit more bulky in fights, but his bulk isn't... Well, I mean, it is a pretty big issue in that he's squishy, but the rest of his team's melting around him anyway. It will allow him to get that ulti off uninterrupted, though. And And Visage, meanwhile, disconnecting from the game, just picked up that mech. I think we'll see a pause coming out. But now Clock and Nevermore going for that Dazzle, and he's going to drop Grave nowhere near enough to save him, thanks to the 8-second duration of Cogs. And yeah, here we have the pause coming out. But at the same time, I mean, Dazzle's now at 7 deaths. But he's not really the one that needs to be punished. I mean, I know that he's been a massive issue game, says Banana now. I think I'm pausing. No, Shadow Fiend. Alright. But while Dazzle has been a massive issue, he's not really a hero that's that worth killing. If you can voice out the Grave, yeah, sure. Now, Weaver in a lot of trouble. Out comes the Dust. Out comes a Sentry. But he does have the ulti to get away, and we don't have any follow-up. We had to have Spirit Breaker's ulti, but no way to spot him out. And now he's going to back off as fast as he possibly can with a Surge and Shikuki. But even though Dazzle is dropping, I mean, he's not that big a threat in terms of heroes you want to kill. It's more so you want to be waiting for the Alchemist, waiting for the Weaver, as you saw there. Weaver very slippery, able to get away. But if you keep picking up this Dazzle, yeah, sure. I mean, the Dazzle will start to fall behind and farm, but at the same time, he's already got his mech. There's not really that many items he can extend into. I mean, maybe a Sheepstick or whatever. But outside of that, he's just not a hero that should be picked up too aggressively. I would have preferred that Clock ulti to be saved for the Weaver. Finish him off. To be able to chase him, to be able to prevent the ulti from coming off. I should say. I do apologize. So it looks like now we're seeing that roaming from the Dire side trying to control this jungle, but they don't have any vision whatsoever. We do now. They have actually spotted him going this way. I thought that Radiant might have been roaming deeper into their jungle, but it looks like they're trying to connect up with the Weaver. They're going for Brazil. She pops out Nature 10, so I don't think it's going to do much when an Alchemist throws out a stun. You get wailed on by 2 carries sitting inside Spray. Now out comes the charge from Antoni, hitting on 3, not able to do too much. So we have the BKB and the ulti coming out from Nevermore, dealing quite a bit of damage to PS Disorder. Now Dazzle on the run, he throws out the Grave, and down goes Darkseer to a charge. I would have preferred that to be safe, for Banana that now is now just wailing away on Nevermore. Down goes TKDota. And down goes Antoni as well. Visage now in a lot of trouble. He might actually be able to finish off the Alchemist if only he had vision, but he's actually going to drop anyway. His familiars have gone as well. And if he'd had detection now, I think they may be able to pick up the Alchemist. But either way, a fantastic fight for the Radiant side. We're now starting to see that power of the Alchemist, just able to wail away on every hero. Part of that was thanks to Dazzle throwing out a heal, which deal a lot of damage to the rest of the Dire side. And the Alchemist wailing in that tower, free tower for them. And we still got 30 seconds. I think they might just want him to keep pushing. Dazzle certainly looks like that's what he wants to do. We do have a TP coming out from Ench, but alone there's not a huge deal she can do. She's squishy. We're going to see the heal coming out. Indeed, there it is, dealing a colossal amount of damage. The heal will allow her to get away without taking too much damage. Without dying. But a lot of damage. Dazzle alone able to pressure that Ench. And I think if the Alchemist was there, they would have at least been able to kill the Enchantress, possibly. And they should have been able to take some damage off that tower as well, but Alchemist meanwhile wants to go back to farm. We do have the charge coming out from the Spirit Breaker, picking up the armlet. We have the hook coming out, not actually connecting. Ultiform coming out from the Alchemist. He has started his stun charging, and I think we're about to see that thrown out, catching too, and Tony taking just a lot of damage from the shell. Alchemist taking down Clockwork in the meantime. Now we have the the touch coming out on Shadow Fiend, and a lot of trouble. He not going to get his ulti off because the BKB wasn't popped. Now we have the stun charging. I mean, Alchemist playing aggressive once again, going for Defaji. Now going to stun him and bring him down. Well, Darkseer brings him down with the shell. And again, Enchantress, the lone survivor, going to see this T2 tower drop. Now they're either going to go for this Rosh or they're going to go for a T3. Enchantress moving out, getting into vision range and taking damage, taking that touch, and she's going to go down to the Alchemist. I'm not sure why she played so aggressively there. Now we have the Weave coming out. And this will be at least a dead tier 3. If not 2, as we have Slark pushing away top. Alchemist meanwhile roaming bot. I wish he would commit to taking it down a tower, in all honesty. He seems to keep winning these fights and then kind of backing off. And I mean, while I don't think there's much that Dia can really do to come back at this point, short of an absolutely miraculous team fight where, I don't know, Nevermore jumps on all 5 and somehow hits a perfect ulti on all 5 because they all crowd around him or something. Visage meanwhile taking a lot of damage, getting vacuumed back. We have the touch up on Spirit Breaker, should be able to get away. And throwing out a Solar Sunshine. Now Weaver in a lot of trouble as the hook comes in. Alchemist wailing away. Grave coming out on the Dazzle. And Tony going to drop to Alchemist, who's now picked up 2 kills. Clock on the run. He's still about 3 seconds off from his Cogs. Not going to be able to throw that out defensively. Alchemist a touch. Going to slow him down. Going to stun him. He goes to Cogs, but it just traps Alchemist in there with him. Now Rise playing aggressively. He only has 9 souls, so a requirement at this point isn't going to do too much at all. Now Alchemist wailing away on Rise. Now he's going to go look for Mrs. Enchantress, I think. Not attacking very fast thanks to her untouchable. But he doesn't really care. He just wants to whack people with his big fists. We have the bash getting picked up on Slark in the meantime. Now stun getting charged up. And he might actually be able to drop Enchantress now. Indeed. No, gonna back off and drop. I think one more right click would have actually been enough to kill Enchantress. Doesn't really matter, he says. I'm gonna buy back anyway. Now it's interesting. We actually saw quite a few heroes drop for Radiant as well as Dire. But I think they were diving because they feel like the game's won already. And to a pretty large extent, I can agree. I don't think that Nevermore sitting at 9 souls in that last fight, and even if he had a good ulti off, I don't think it would have made too big a difference. Alchemist is just dealing way too much damage, now picking up that heart. I would like to see him get that basher, simply because it'll allow him to lock down people even harder. It's actually going to be the Maelstrom. More of a mid-game item than anything else, probably going to be built into that Mjolnir for the attack speed. But when you're fighting a team this squishy, I mean, the bounces from Chain Lightning will deal quite a bit of damage. Spirit has no vision. No, we did have the invisibility coming out from Alchemist, which will allow him to get away. But it looks like now we're going to see Radiant sort of back off a little bit. We do now have the Sheep Stick coming out from Darkseer, which is going for the Vanguard, which is a bit weird. Because Vanguard by itself is just kind of an outdated item. But anyway, we do have the Sheep Stick now, which, I mean, at the moment, the only hero who's really an issue is, Tisurai now getting stunned by the Alchemist. But the charge coming out from Banana Net might actually be able to trap him, though. We do have yet another bash coming out on Banana Net, and the ulti from Rise. They might actually be able to finish off Alchemist, and indeed they do. Now, that's actually quite surprising. I would have thought the Alchemist would be able to roll all over Shadow Fiend, but a lucky bash from Spirit Breaker, coupled with his surefire bashes with the charge and his ulti. We're actually able to lock the Alchemist down. Part of it is, I think, he doesn't have big AB at the moment, so he does still take quite a bit of magic damage. Now, Cog coming out on Beskrit Crit, going out the grave, but he's caught in Cogs for quite a long time still, and he's going to drop. Indeed, there he goes.
Don't think I wasn't fond of you.
Wow. Looking at gold, it's still 20k in Radiant's favor, 15k in terms of XP. But out comes another hook from TKDota. He is going to take a lot of damage, going to go down to that tower. But now he's caught 2 inside the Cogs. One of them's going to drop very shortly. And down goes Nevermore. Sheepstick in under the tower. Sakurai taking a lot of damage, is going to ulti and get all of that health back. Now Antomi on the run. Slark playing aggressively, going for the Enchantress, picking her up. And Massage on the run. He did pick up that Slark. Now trying to desperately get away from a lot of illusions. Weaver following suit. But it is interesting, because up until this fight here, it looked like Radiant had this in the bag. But now we suddenly see Dire turning around and actually start to take these fights. Being able to take on their Alchemist, as I said. Being able to take a fight under that tower. 5-4 fight, but even then. Did actually able to sort of hold their own. Now, they still did drop under that tower. They still did, I think, overextend a little bit. Simply because we had those TPs coming out. We had that Sheep Stick from Darkseer locking Nevermore down. And, Visage now picking up that medallion. But now it suddenly feels like Radiant still have the lead, as I said. But suddenly, I think they will be a bit less sure about when to take this fight. So they're probably going to try for that Rosh next, especially this Alchemist. He suddenly realized that he can't take on the entire team by himself. And with that realization, I think they will want to start to pull back, start playing a little bit more defensively. And as I said, going with that Rosh, looks like Weaver's roaming in there now, or he's just picking something up. Going for that Lincoln's, which will help him deal with the Spirit Breaker. A hero like Weaver, not the fondest hero of lockdown, because if he is caught, then he is dead, unless he can get that ulti. Yeah, basically he has to get the ulti off, which the Lincolns will go a long way to help, because it means that instead of having 2 or 3 stuns, you've only got 2. Spirit Breaker meanwhile charging top, going for that Dazzle, who's in a lot of trouble, doesn't have anywhere getting away, no TP scroll, and indeed, in comes Tony, and it's actually going to be Enchantress picks it up with a impetus throw. Now that Dai is actually starting to rediscover their momentum, I would like to see some wards up in this area again, because they, even though they don't, I think they don't want to play aggressively, because they do still know that they have a risk of throwing it away. If they start to sort of pull back and play defense, we go, oh, we'll just win these fights. And eventually Alchemist will get that farm up and start to roll over them again. But while they've still got this advantage, while they can still catch heroes out, I think they need to be using that advantage. Trying to pick up heroes, trying to get wards up here, wards up in that jungle. Anything to delay that farm. We do now have the Weaver caught out, charge coming out on him, and Weaver is actually going to drop as the charge comes out from Spirit Breaker, heading for something else, who knows what. Yeah, another pickup. Now, Alchemist sort of looking like he wants to go in, is going to back off. We don't have any vision there. And now we're going to see this Rosh go down, almost certainly. We don't have vision. It doesn't look like Alchemist has any idea what's going on. You know, had the Enchantress running around. But there goes the Aegis. And 5 minutes ago, I would have said this was Radiant's game without a doubt, but suddenly, Dire, they've been able to get these big pickoffs, and to be honest, a lot of it feels more down to, well, it has been some exceptional play by Clockwork, really able to take advantage of those heroes caught out of position. Same with Spirit Breaker, with that multitude of stuns he has, really able to catch people out. But at the same time, it feels more like Radiant, they're kind of exposing themselves to these ganks. You heard Weaver heading very, very deep into the Dire territory. You had the Dazzle roaming around up here for whatever reason. But even if that's the case, it still remains that Dire suddenly are back in this game, able to get these pickoffs, getting some farm onto the Shadow, and more importantly, getting the Aegis. And with that Aegis up, we do now have the Lincolns coming out on the Weaver, which, as I said, will prevent him from getting locked down too hard. Now, I think, yeah, we do have Alchemist. Looks like he wants to go in. We're going to see that. Yeah, and indeed, there he goes. We do have the Sentry up. Is going to give them some idea what's going on. Now, out comes the stun on Spirit Breaker, way away from the fight. Now, Rise going for the ulti. Out comes the calls on Banana Net and the ulti. Banana Net taking a lot of damage as Rise gets melted, actually. He does still have Aegis, and Tomy now on the run, gets shifted down and is not able to get away, and Chantress dropping. Now Rise going for the Weaver, won't be able to kill him though, as the mechanism comes out, and down goes Rise. Clockwork on the run. Visage caught in between 3 heroes and a Darkseer ulti. And he's going to drop as well. The Cogs will allow Clock to get away, but that's it. And I may have spoken too soon. I did think that Dias looked like they were starting to head back, but they still can't take these big fights. If Alchemist is able to just wail away you with the support of his team with that Sheepstick from Darkseer, nice ulti from Clock is going to enable him to get away. But yeah, if we see another fight like that, where Alchemist is just able to wail away on you with the support of his team, you've got the Dazzle coming down with the Weave, you've got Weaver picking people off from the edge. I think he was actually most of what was killing Nevermore. Then you will, yeah, they still apparently cannot take those big team fights. They had to keep looking for pickup. They had to at least pick up one hero before trying to commit to a fight like that. And I think this is going to be both Raxus down for that Radiant side. And indeed, there it is, looking for the bot as well. And if this drops, I think the game is over for Dire. Because they can't come back from 2 Raxes, I don't think. They're just not going, because as I said, their big advantage is trying to pressure. Brazil taking a lot of damage. In comes the Clock 4 staffs, and he does have his ulti to get out if need be. But now 3 heroes running around at that bot lane. Grave coming out on Dazzle. Now playing for that Weaver. Should be able to get away though, no detection. Ulti coming out from Spirit Breaker, catching Darkseer. Darkseer taking quite a bit of damage. Heal coming out from the Dazzle, and the touch should be able to stop Antony. And indeed, he is taking a lot of damage. Now the coming in on that Dazzle, trying to kill him. We have got another Grave coming out, but he is going to drop, thanks to the creeps of all things. Now, Tony tried to get away as Darkseer suddenly turns around and kills him. Well, creeps kill him, actually. Now, in comes the Alchemist. Now, Cogs are going to stop Alchemist from going for that Clock. Clock doesn't have a TP to get away, but the stun is going to just melt Enchantress anyway. Now, we do have the Nevermore up, so I think they will look to muster some kind of defense. Because they're basically, like I said, they're not a team that does well when playing from behind, especially if that Rax drops. They just won't be able to move out of their base for long enough to really pressure the enemy. They won't be able to look for those pickoffs any longer because they'll just be too busy trying to stem the tide of super creeps. Alchemist about 5 seconds away from his ulti, and I think once that's up, once Dazzle respawns, we will start to see him pushing in. We do now have the Molnir up. He's going for that crit stick. I would sort of like to see him get that BKB, if only to just make him a bigger, scarier target. Because it will prevent Spirit Breaker from dealing any damage at all. It will prevent Shadow from really doing anything. Clock coming in on TJ Jack, going invisible. Out comes Essentially though, and he is going to drop. Looks like Alchemist now wants to go in. We do have the stun, we do have the invisibility. Going for the Clock of all things, I think it would have been better served going for Shadowfiend. Shadowfiend actually squishier and way bigger a target. Meanwhile, the charge coming out on Banana Net. He might actually be able to go. Out comes the ulti and finish him off, actually the tower. And now TKDota on the run. Ha 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 ha, says. Out comes the ulti from Clock. Nice little shot, I must say, and picks up that Darkseer. At the same time now, it feels more like they're prolonging the inevitable. I just don't think that there's much they can do against an Alchemist this far. Another hook from Clock. He does have the Aghanims up, caught under the tower, not able to get away. We don't have the ulti up. Tower going to get denied. Hey, let's make them happy, lol, says Alchemist. And I can sort of agree with the sentiment. It doesn't really feel like Dire has much of a shot. They're going to be able to defend, sure, but we're just... I mean, Radiant can just wait for this rush to get up, and they'll just be able to roll over everything that Dire tries to throw up to stop them. I think, especially now that you've got one Rax down, you've got the top Rax bare, you've got a T3 tower with about a quarter of a HP remaining. I think that Radiant will just be able to pick away at these buildings and then just come over the top. It doesn't feel like this map is... I mean, looking at World Cup, we've got one up for Radiant down near that rush. We've got another one up in the Dire jungle. No coverage at all when it comes to the Dire side. So they have no idea what's going on in their jungle. They have no idea what's roaming around in here. I mean, we still do have them roaming quite far out. But it means that if Dire were to go for those... We do now have a gem picked up on Clockwork, which will allow them to deal with some of that ward coverage. But even then, we don't have wards of their own. So they're not going to be able to do... So they can't really extend too far out because they have no way of knowing what's coming for them. And even where Shadowfiend and Spirit Breaker is, feels a bit risky because you don't have... For all they know, the Radiant side could be roaming around and picking and about to pick off that Shadowfiend. And if Shadowfiend goes down, does he have go for buyback? He does not. So if he goes down, if they're able to get that pickup, I think they will just be able to roll straight over the top. Clock and Shadowfiend, I think, are a big part of what's keeping the game. Also, that lockdown from a Spirit Breaker. If one of those heroes drops, if you lose the damage from Shadowfiend, if you lose that lockdown from Spirit Breaker, or if you lose the initiation from Clock, suddenly you have no way to muster a cohesive defense. And Cogs alone, I think, are a big part of what is preventing Radiant from coming over the top. Is the fact that they're trying to move in and suddenly they're getting bounced around all over the place. We do now have the Radiant side, it looks like, grouping up middle. Everybody aside from Weaver. Weaver looks like he's actually AFK in that forest. But I think now this is going to be the big push for down mid. I think maybe going down mid, then going off to the top for that Rax. They know it's easy to push mid because the Rax are already down. They also know that they have no buildings up in that mid tower. Net coming out on Slack. He's going to pop his ulti, which means he won't have it up for this first fight. Now we have the Cook coming out from Clock, landing on creeps. Out comes a touch on him. He's going to force stuff away. Vacuum bringing him back along with two others. Now Nevermore trying to get his ulti off. He gets it off, dealing quite a large amount of damage, but will it be enough? TJ on the run, it was enough for a slug, he goes down. Banana Net now dropping as the lockdown comes out from the Visage picking out of all things. TKDota now on the run, Dazzle picking up the Enchantress in the meantime. Now Weaver going down thanks to Dust. Dazzle on the run gets locked down, not going to be able to get away. And now we have the hook coming out, not able to hit the Darkseer, but now PK Disorder going for that Visage, not able to finish him off though. And it's him who actually deals with it. And now we have 3 up, 4 up on the Radiant side, sorry, on the Dire side. The entire team wiped for Radiant. I was got a minute left on that Rosh. I think the buyback was to go for that Rosh. We did have that tower dropping for the Dire side, however. And again, even though that now they're actually starting to win these fights quite convincingly, but I'm still not sure that they can actually push out. Like, they still don't have anywhere, they don't really feel like they're controlling the game. It's basically, you know, every time Radiant actually comes in, they're knocking him out of the park. But it still feels very much like Radiant are in control of this game. They're setting the tempo, they're the ones who are saying, alright, we're going to be pushing into this base. This should be, I think, the T2. We do have the TP coming out from Slug. Not going to be able to do too much on his own, I don't think. And indeed, up into back off very smartly. We're about 5 seconds away from Alchemist respawning, and once he's up, there's not much that Dire will not be able to push into this base, and indeed, they're already backing off. We do now have Rosh up, and I think they will be looking for that. Radiant, I think, probably aware of the fact that Rosh is up as well. We do have the ward coming down. We don't have vision in the area, but I think they will be looking to stop Dire from going for it. Rise already wailing away, doing quite a bit of damage. We have the Medallion coming out, and they might actually be able to finish off before Radiant are able to do anything about it. Not even sure that they do know something's going on. And indeed, that's going to be an Aegis for Nevermore. And suddenly, I mean, up until this point, I mean, for the last 20 minutes, really, I felt like it's Dire's, that it's Radiant's game. But suddenly, we're seeing that last fight, as I said, it didn't really feel like Radiant was out of losing control. But now that we have the Aegis up on Nevermore, we might actually be able to see a fight that where Radiant gets wiped again, and suddenly Shadow Fiend is actually able to push down that lane thanks to the Aegis. He's able to come back and actually take a fight aggressively. And now Alchemist not wanting to commit now, and I think they will probably try and wait out this Aegis. Because I think they still have the advantage as long as Shadow Fiend doesn't manage to use the Aegis in an aggressive manner. Another factor is he did get a very, very good ulti off in that fight. It did a lot of damage to the team. It now reduces damage by 50%. Sorry, 25%, is it? Could have sworn it was 50. But there we go. And so that alone took quite a bit of an edge off of the Alchemist. Looking at gold and XP. We are seeing a bit of a dip in gold, I think, after that last fight. It's still 25k in Radiant's favor. But XP, another story altogether, only about 4k, a massive drop off back towards Dire after that last fight. Looks like Shadow Fiend is indeed looking to use that Aegis aggressively, as indeed he has to. They can't afford to be playing a defensive game. Because Weaver still only has the Yasha, still has his poor man's shield, doing the Shadow Fiend coming out on the Enchantress will give her a bit more survivability. Now Aqua's popping the ulti, he's thinking about going in now. He has the Daedalus, he has the Helm of the Dominator, and he's popped his ulti, so if ever there was a time to be moving in, this is it. It looks like they're going to be going for that bot tower after all. Sorry, that bot Rax. We have a charge coming out on TJ Jack. Dust comes out, but the hook not able to connect. And he should be able to get away now. But now they're going to be able to get this Rax. We have the Fortify coming out. Visage roaming in. Not much he can do by himself. TP coming in from Clockwork. He does have his ulti out. Hooks in on Banana Net. Is going to be able to cogs him in. Now we have Banana Net and a lot of out comes the Grave. Will prevent him from going down. But out comes Soul Assumption. Not quite enough. But it A right click is going to finish him. Now the ulti from Rise, shredding to Dazzle, going down. Now we have Nevermore on the aggressive. Weaver picking up 2 kills. Meanwhile, Rise quite low, but still going for that Darkseid. Darkseid has Surge. You should be able to go. He has the Sheepstick as well, and indeed, down goes the Nevermore. And he's going to come back. That's a waste. I'd say a wasted Aegis. We do still have Alchemist, the only one on his team left. Do we have buyback on Weaver? We do not. Looking like he wants to go in. The question is, can he muster much of a defense on his own? We do have the ulti up from Clock, thanks to that. Thanks to the Aghanims. Nevermore looks like he wants to push down. Maybe we have the hook coming out from Clock. We have rotation in coming in from Spirit Breaker. 5 seconds off the charge. Can't really do too much at the moment. 1 second. We might see him going. Indeed, here we go. We do have the invisibility. Out comes the hook. A bit of a stun overlap there, but now cogged in. He's just going to be able to man fight TKDota though. They do need Nevermore there for that damage. Now wailing away on Banana Net, and the cogs are just enough to bounce him back. The BKB coming out from the Nevermore, not actually able to finish the Alchemist off. And I think that's a pretty big issue, because Rise now has popped the BKB. He's taking a lot of damage from the tower. That's going to put an end to any kind of aggressive play. And they picked up the Alchemist. I think there would have been a roll over that chop. We now have Slut coming in, taking out the Nevermore. He does have buyback, but he's 99 seconds of respawn. And if he goes down in this next fight, and Cherry now on the run, Slug jumping in, actually managed to miss. Out comes the hook from TKDota, but he's going to drop now, pinned in on top of a Slug. Slug actually able to take down, not dropping thanks to the way damage works on familiars. Bit of a pain. The stun might have been enough. I think he may already have used that. Now we have the gem getting picked up, and that's going to allow Alchemist to roam in with that Shadow Blade. More importantly, we've still got Clock. Doesn't have buyback. We have Nevermore with buyback, still 60 seconds off from respawning if he doesn't want to go that way. But Nevermore doesn't have his soul, so he's not going, because those big ultis have been a major part of what has been winning these last few fights, dishing out the damage. And now with him down, T-Jack going for Spirit. We do have Shadow Fiend buying back. As I said, not enough souls to deal. He'll be dealing half damage with those souls. TP coming in from that Enchantress. Alchemist now on the run. He's throwing out these graves rather preemptively, I feel, when they're about half health, if not earlier. Like on there, he was full health. He had plenty of time to do a more one that would have bought him more time. He did manage to take down the Rax, but none of that now dropping. Thanks again to that Spirit Breaker, but we do have that melee Rax down. Darkseer on the run. Weaver looking like he wants to go in.
Radiant structures are fortified.
But meanwhile, at top, we will, I think, see this T2 going down. We do have a TV coming in from Weaver. But at the same time, this takes a lot of pressure off of the off that Rax. It means Weaver can't suddenly sneak in and pick up the second Rax. And I think Nevermore is again looking for that mid. You do have Alchemist down. You know he's brought back. He's now back up at 36 souls, so he knows that his ulti is going to be dealing a lot of damage if he gets it off in these fights. And Challenge is committing suicide. I don't think she meant to do that. Oh no, she might have actually. Slark was going for her. No, we do have Darkseid. He does have his ulti up, so he can use it if necessary. He's going to throw out the vacuum first, though, which is going to prevent him getting a massive ulti off in the next 15 seconds. Now we have a TP coming in from the Slark. But I think, yeah, there goes the tower. They're just going to go straight for the Rax, I think. And unless Darkseid turns around, still 10 seconds away from that vacuum. A bit preemptive with that, in all honesty, because it means that he can't really do much to take this fight now. Now the crit stick getting picked up on Spirit Breaker. A little bit more damage. And that's going to be the first Rax for Dire. And suddenly, again, it feels like it's swung back their way pretty hard. I'll bring up gold. Still, I mean, it's dipping quite heavily back in the. It's still 20k in Radiant Hero, owing, I think, in part to the Alchemist with greed, massive farming power, and but XP basically even. So, fight-wise though, every one of these last fights, Dire has been able to win, if not easily. In that last fight, they did actually win, I think, quite easily. They were to pick up the Alchemist. Grave getting thrown out once again. And again, Dazzle, I think, is throwing out these Graves too early. Especially when you consider how much the Radiant side, sorry, the Dire side, rely on these big lockdown skills. You have Spirit Breaker in both charge and his ulti. We now have TKDota getting caught out. Brazil on the run, but the cogs should be enough to let him get away. Charge now coming out on TJ Jack, who's taking a lot of damage from Impetus alone. And out comes the charge on TJ Jack. The ulti comes out as well, going to finish him off. But now, Banana Net looking for a kill. Going to stun himself. Hook comes in on creeps. And I think Brazil actually running quite far ahead. She is invisible. Should be okay to get away. But Dazzle getting the touch off on Rise. He does have BKB. He should be using it. And indeed, there it is. Out comes the ulti, shredding BK. He gets the Grave up. And that will be enough to let him live. But for how long? Not very long at all is the answer. And that's, I mean, Nevermore just uses ulti, which we just saw a hook. I just heard a hook coming out. I think just a searching one. Now, Alchemist going on, whatever, we're not going to take this fight, so I'll just rotate. But TKDota now roaming. We have the charge coming out, and if Alchemist gets caught, that's a big issue. He doesn't have money for buyback. He's charging up the stun. We'll be able to take on TKDota. Now, Rise wailing away. Stun coming out, and he is going to drop to an Enchantress. He doesn't have BKB out, which means Enchantress actually dealing quite a bit of damage. And at this point, I would like to see him buy that BKB because it will stop quite a bit of that magic damage. It still means he's going to get locked down because every single one of the Dire's stuns goes to magic immunity, aside from the familiars. But everything Spirit Breaker starting out through magic immunity, Clock's ulti through magic immunity. But now that he's down, Dire suddenly can push down this mid, and I think they know it. We have about a minute off from that Rosh. They may be thinking about going for that, but we've got 2 bot, so I think they'll at least take down the T3 tower, and maybe try and head head for that Rosh then. Because they can do it. If they can keep picking Alchemist off like that, they have the advantage in these fights. Alchemist is an absolutely massive part of, well, I'd say he's the biggest part, hands down. Dazzle, not really that big an issue anymore. Weaver, still not doing that well in terms of farm. I mean, he has been able to pick up some heroes, but he's still only at 1700 compared to Nevermore and Enchantress. And without that BKB as well, they can pick him off fairly quickly. And without Alchemist to take the brunt of the damage, without Alchemist there to just be this big beefy target who's soaking up most of what Dire has, Weaver will drop quite quickly. They are actually going to Spirit Breaker Beam are picking up yet another kill on that Darkseer. And I think they're going to be going for this Rosh now. We don't have vision up there for either team. So TJ Rise will be prone to getting his being caught with his pants down. At the same time, he should be able to, looking at the damage, he might be able to finish off the Roshan before anything really comes in from the Radiant. It doesn't look like Alchemist really knows what's going on. He's heading that way now. He doesn't have the Lothars. And down goes that Rosh. Yet another one for the Dire side. Shadowfiend, and this is the point now. Last time they didn't really have the power to play aggressively. Now they suddenly do. Suddenly they know that they can take this fight. So if they can catch this Alchemist, they still can't take, I don't think they can take these big 5-on-5 at the very start fights. But if they're able to get one pick off, they're able to pick off the Dazzle as we saw in that last fight. Now in comes the hook on the Alchemist. They're able to pick up the Alchemist here, then I think this fight is over. TJ Rise gets the ulti off, dealing quite a bit of damage as always. Charge coming out on the Alchemist, should be enough to finish him. Now Slut going down, but he's quite low. He's going to drop. Now Sequin on the run. Do we have the buyback on Alch? We do not. We do have the Aegis lost on Shadowfiend, but I don't think it really matters. Another hook coming out, catching SRIM. He doesn't have the ulti to get away, and he's going to go down as well. Dazzle, the only defender. We still have Darkseer up. He does have his ulti up if necessary, but I think Dire is just going to go straight. Another hook catching Dazzle. Now in comes the Darkseer, going for the Sheepstick on TKDota, but now taking a lot of damage as in comes the charge from Spirit Breaker. Still 60 seconds off on the Alchemist. He doesn't have buyback, as I said. Down go the T4s. Look at the melt. Low GG says TYS Rise. And finally, here goes that Ancient. Support that wants to carry equals GG. I think referring to Dazzle. And there goes that Ancient. And that was a real nail biter actually, because as I said, I didn't think that Dire would be able to come back. It looked like they were winning these fights, but they still didn't have control. Looking at gold, still 10k in Radiant's favor. XP actually swinging over to Dire's favor, but you're not carry. Okay. Now we're getting some shit talk coming out, but a massive up until I'd say where Alchemist got picked off. Like I think Alchemist getting picked off a couple of times was the big changing factor, where we saw him get picked off when he was going for that bot racks. If he hadn't died there, then I think he still would have been in the game. We would have seen that Rosh. He would have had a lot more control of that Rosh. But as is, Dire, in the end, able to play a very, very great defensive game. I did say that I didn't think, even though they're winning these fights, I didn't think they'd be able to come back. But in the end, they managed to prove me wrong. They were able to wrest control away from the Alchemist, get some pickoffs, and with that final Alchemist death, thanks to those Clock hooks, Clock was playing out of his mind in those last 5 minutes, getting hook after hook after hook, catching person after person after person out, and assuring that his team was always coming into these fights with an advantage. So well played by him, and well played by Spiritbreaker, who was doing a very similar thing. So, my name is 5525, thank you for watching, I'll catch you next time.